My name is Jack, and I've been driving trucks for years. The highway is my second home. But the night I encountered the midnight caller, it turned into something far darker than I could have ever imagined. It was an unusually quiet evening, the kind of night where you could hear your own thoughts over the rumbling engine. The road stretched endlessly in front of me, and the radio was silent, save for the occasional crackle. There wasn't a single car in sight for miles, just the open road and the solitude of the night. I had been driving for hours, my eyelids heavy with exhaustion. I'd hoped to make it to the next rest stop, but I hadn't seen one for miles. That's when my phone rang. At first, I thought it was just a wrong number. I picked it up, half-heartedly answering, "Hello." There was no response, just a strange, static noise on the other end. Then, after what felt like an eternity, a voice finally came through. "Keep driving." I froze, my grip tightening around the wheel. The voice was low, hoarse, and unmistakably chilling. My pulse quickened. "Who is this?" I asked, but there was no reply, just silence. I pulled the phone away from my ear and looked at the screen. The number was blocked. No area code, no name, just darkness. "Hello," I said again, trying to shake off the unease creeping over me. Then, I heard it again. "Keep driving." This time, I could hear something else in the background, whispers, muffled voices, like a crowd of people talking. My breath caught in my throat. I glanced around, the truck, suddenly feeling as though I wasn't alone. The only sounds I could hear were the whispers and the hum of the truck's engine. I slammed the phone down, my nerves fraying. Something wasn't right. I tried to push the thoughts out of my head and focus on the road, but my hands were trembling. The air felt thick, heavy, as if the very weight of the night was pressing down on me. Then, the phone rang again. I stared at the screen for a long moment before answering. "What do you want?" I snapped, my voice shaky. The voice on the other end was different this time. It was more urgent, more insistent. "Stop, now." I could hear the sound of a deep, ragged breath, as though whoever was speaking was struggling to say the words, "Stop, ... before it's too late." My heart skipped a beat. I felt a sudden, overwhelming sense of dread. My instincts screamed at me to pull over, to get out of the truck. But something kept me from doing it. Maybe it was the loneliness of the road, or maybe I was just too curious, too afraid of what might happen if I ignored the voice. I didn't stop. I kept driving, my hands locked on the wheel, my mind racing. The whispers grew louder, more distinct, until they filled the truck. My breath came in short gasps, and the road seemed to stretch on forever. The phone rang one last time. I didn't answer it, but when I looked in the rearview mirror, I saw something that made my blood run cold. A pair of headlights, bright and blinding, were rapidly closing in on me. At first, I thought it was another truck, but as the lights drew closer, I realized the vehicle was moving too fast, too erratically. The truck was right behind me now, almost touching the rear of my rig. My pulse hammered in my chest. I swerved, trying to get away, but the truck followed. No matter how fast I went, no matter how much I swerved, it stayed right behind me. Then, just as suddenly as it appeared, the truck vanished. No headlights, no engine noise, just the empty road behind me. I didn't stop again. I didn't look back. To this day, I can't explain what happened, but I know one thing for sure. There are things out there on the road that you should never cross paths with. And if you ever hear a voice in the night telling you to stop, just keep driving. My name's Tom, and I've been driving rigs for years. But the night I encountered the stopped truck, I knew I would never be the same. It was late, well past midnight, on a desolate stretch of highway. The kind of road that stretches endlessly, with no lights, no towns, just the hum of the truck and the dark sky above. I was on my way to a delivery, and the night felt like any other until I saw it. Up ahead, there was a truck, stopped in the middle of the road. No hazards, no lights, just parked there. My first instinct was to slow down, but I was already too close. The road was narrow, and the truck took up almost the entire lane. I honked the horn, waiting for the driver to move. Nothing. I pulled up beside it, keeping my eyes on the truck, expecting the driver to pop out and apologize. But there was no movement, not a sound from the cab. It was as if the truck had been abandoned. I don't know why, but something told me I needed to keep moving. I didn't feel right about stopping. Maybe it was the silence. Maybe it was the strange feeling that hung in the air. But I couldn't ignore the nagging sensation that I was being watched. I eased the rig forward, moving to pass the truck. That's when I heard a scraping sound. At first, I thought it was the tires on the rough asphalt, but then the sound came again, louder. It was coming from inside the truck. I glanced at the rearview mirror. The truck wasn't behind me anymore. Somehow, it had moved closer, right behind me, but I hadn't seen it move. My stomach sank. I slammed my foot on the gas, but as I looked ahead, there it was, the truck, now in front of me, blocking my way. I tried to swerve, but the road was too narrow, and the truck was too close. The headlights cast an eerie glow over its rusted frame. I could see the driver now, a figure hunched over in the seat, staring at me, unmoving. But his face, it was wrong. His eyes were wide open, unblinking, too wide. His mouth was open, but no sound came out. I didn't know what to do. Panic set in. I slammed on the brakes, hoping to avoid a crash, but the truck didn't move. It didn't need to. It was already in my way. I closed my eyes for just a second, and when I opened them again, the truck was gone. The road was clear. I don't know how it happened or how it disappeared, but I'm telling you, there was something wrong with that truck. Something that shouldn't be out there on those lonely roads. I've driven that stretch of highway again, but I've never seen that truck again, and I never want to. My name is Danny, and I've been driving trucks for over a decade. But there's one road I'll never drive again, no matter what. It was a late shift, and I was pushing my limits to get to the next stop. The highway was long, empty, and the moon hung low in the sky, casting an eerie light on the asphalt. It was the kind of road where you could drive for hours without seeing another soul. I'd been on this stretch of highway before, but this time something felt different. The road seemed darker than usual, the black pavement absorbing all the light. My headlights barely cut through the fog that seemed to hang in the air, and a strange chill crept in, despite the warmth of the night. It wasn't long before I noticed the first sign, a road sign, rusty and weathered, leaning to the side like it had been abandoned for years. The name of the town was blurred beyond recognition. I slowed down, the hairs on the back of my neck standing up. There was something off about this place, something I couldn't put my finger on. I decided to keep going, telling myself I was just tired, maybe imagining things. But the further I drove, the stranger it got. The road started to narrow, the trees closing in on either side, their branches like skeletal hands reaching out. That's when I saw a figure standing by the side of the road. At first, I thought it was a hitchhiker, but as I got closer, I saw that it was no person. It was just standing there, unnaturally still, its head turned toward me, but there were no features. No eyes, no face, just smooth, featureless skin. I slammed on the brakes, my heart racing, but the figure didn't move. It just stood there, watching. I knew I had to keep moving, but my foot felt glued to the pedal. The truck rumbled as I slowly drove past, my eyes locked on that strange, lifeless figure. Suddenly, the truck lurched. The engine sputtered, the lights flickered, and the radio came to life, blasting static. I panicked, pulling over to the side of the road. I turned the engine off, trying to gather my thoughts. The truck wouldn't start. That's when I heard a voice faint and distant at first, like a whisper in the wind. Turned back. I froze. My pulse thundered in my ears. I scanned the surroundings, but the road was empty again. The figure was gone, but the voice came again, louder this time. Turn back before it's too late. I didn't know what to do. I was frozen, caught between fear and the need to get moving. I tried the ignition again. The truck roared to life, and I wasted no time, slamming my foot on the gas and tearing down the road. But as I sped down the highway, I saw the sign again, the one I had passed earlier, the one with the blurred name. This time, though, it was different. It wasn't just a sign anymore. It was a barrier, blocking the road. A wall of solid blackness, stretching as far as I could see. I swerved to the side, narrowly avoiding it, but when I looked back, the road was clear again. The barrier was gone. My heart raced as I pushed the truck faster, desperate to leave that road behind. I made it out, but I don't know how. The road was gone the next time I tried to find it. I've asked around, but no one seems to know anything about it. But I know what I saw. I know what I heard. And I know one thing for sure: I'll never drive that road again. I'm Mike, and I've been on the road for over 20 years. But there's one stretch of highway I'll never drive again, no matter how much the load demands it. It was one of those nights where the sky felt heavier than usual, pressing down on the road like it was suffocating. I'd been driving for hours without seeing another soul. The truck was beginning to feel like my only company, the hum of the engine and the soft glow of the dashboard the only signs of life. Around midnight, I hit a stretch of road known for being a little too quiet. I'd heard stories about this place. A few drivers swore they'd seen things, heard things that didn't make sense. But I never believed in that stuff. That is, until that night. I was cruising along, tired but keeping my eyes on the road, when I heard the unmistakable sound of a horn, a trucker's horn, loud, sharp, and just behind me. I checked my mirrors. Nothing. The road behind me was empty, not a single vehicle in sight. It couldn't have been another truck. But the horn came again, this time closer, louder. I felt a chill creep up my spine. I glanced in the mirror again. Nothing. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, that something was watching me. But I kept driving, telling myself it was just my mind playing tricks on me. Maybe it was a passing vehicle, even though there was no sign of one. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw headlights in my rearview mirror. But they weren't like normal headlights. They were too bright, too intense. They got closer, faster than any vehicle could be traveling on that road. I could hear the horn again, blasting in short bursts, like a warning. I slammed my foot on the brake, my heart pounding. I jerked the wheel to the side, but when I looked in the side mirror, the headlights were gone. There was nothing there, just the black road stretching endlessly ahead. I stopped the truck and sat there, trying to calm myself down. I thought maybe I had imagined it. Maybe the stress had gotten to me. But as I sat there, the horn sounded once more. Only this time, it wasn't from behind me. It was coming from right in front of me. I looked ahead, my eyes wide. There was nothing. In the distance, just empty road. But then I saw faint headlights in the distance, moving toward me at an impossible speed. I panicked. I floored the gas pedal, swerving into the opposite lane, praying to get out of the way. But the headlights kept closing in. I could hear the horn again, growing louder and louder until it felt like it was in my ears. And then, just as suddenly as it began, everything stopped. The headlights vanished, the horn ceased. The road was silent again. My hands were shaking, and my breath was shallow. I pulled over to the shoulder, too shaken to keep driving. I don't know what happened that night. Maybe I was just tired. Maybe it was all in my head. But I swear on everything I've got, I could feel it. I could hear it. And I was not alone. After that night, I haven't gone back on that highway. I'm not sure what I saw, but I know one thing for sure. I'll never forget the sound of that phantom horn. My name is Jake, and I've been a trucker for years. That night, I took a detour, a shortcut I'd never tried before. It was around midnight, and the road was quiet. The GPS was silent, and the radio flickered with static. I kept driving, the road becoming narrower. The trees crowded in, casting long shadows. Then, in the distance, I saw a decaying wooden bridge. Something didn't feel right, but I pressed on. As I crossed, the air grew colder. The truck's engine hummed, but the silence felt suffocating. That's when I heard a tapping sound. At first, I thought it was a branch hitting the truck, but it grew louder, rhythmic. Something was knocking on my window. I checked the side mirror. No one. The tapping stopped. I shook it off and kept driving. Then, I saw him, a figure standing in the middle of the road. A tall man, his movements jerky, like he was glitching in and out of existence. I slammed on the brakes, stopping inches from him. He didn't move, just stared at me, his face hidden in shadows. My throat tightened, and I tried to speak, but nothing came out. The man approached the truck, his movements unnaturally fast. His face, there was nothing there. Just smooth, pale skin, no eyes, no mouth. "You're lost," he whispered, his voice like the wind. The air grew colder, and my heart raced. Without thinking, I slammed the gas pedal. The truck lurched forward, but when I looked in the rearview mirror, the man was behind me, walking with that same unnatural speed. No matter how fast I drove, he stayed with me, just out of reach. Hours felt like minutes, but finally, I saw the lights of a town ahead. I reached civilization again, shaking, and pulled into a truck stop. I tried to tell the clerk, but she looked at me like I was crazy. I've driven that stretch of road since, but that bridge, it's gone. I've searched for it, but it's like it never existed. Some roads, some detours, lead to places that are better left forgotten. My name is Mason. I've been behind the wheel of a truck for nearly 15 years now, hauling freight across this vast, empty country. There are days when the road feels like an old friend, silent, but always there. But some nights, the road feels like it has a mind of its own. It was around 2 a.m. when I found myself on a stretch of highway I didn't recognize. I had taken a detour, trying to avoid traffic, but now it felt like I was in the middle of nowhere. No streetlights, number signs, just me, the truck, and the endless black of the night. At first, I didn't mind. The isolation was normal for a trucker. But as I drove on, I started noticing something strange. The road seemed to be getting narrower, the trees lining it taller, more oppressive. The air grew thicker, like the world itself was holding its breath. I was almost to the point of turning around when I saw it. A car, parked on the side of the road, its headlights dim, flickering like a dying flame. It was an old sedan, the kind you see in horror movies, rusty, battered, like it hadn't seen a mechanic in years. I slowed down as I passed it, glancing over to see if anyone was inside. The windows were rolled up, but I could swear I saw movement. Not someone sitting in the front seat, but something crawling, writhing in the back. My heart raced, and I told myself to keep going. I wasn't about to get involved with some random roadside incident, not at this hour. But as I drove farther down the road, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was following me. I glanced in my rearview mirror and saw nothing, just the endless stretch of road behind me. Then, a thump. I jumped, my hands instinctively gripping the wheel. I glanced over at the side mirror. There, standing in the middle of the road, was a man. He wasn't moving, just standing there, staring at the truck with his hands hanging limp at his sides. I slammed on the brakes, pulling the truck to a screeching halt. I couldn't see his face, but I could feel his eyes on me, like they were piercing through the dark. My breath caught in my chest. I was about to open the door and ask if he needed help, But then the man took a step back, slowly. His movements were unnatural, like a puppet on a string, jerky and mechanical. I hesitated, my foot still on the brake, when I saw something even more terrifying. He wasn't alone. Figures began to appear, emerging from the trees, from the shadows, dozens of them, people, all standing still, all staring. I didn't wait to see more. I slammed my foot down on the gas pedal, the truck lurching forward, tearing down the road as fast as I could. But no matter how fast I went, the figures kept pace. They stayed just out of sight, always lingering in my peripheral vision, always just behind me, as if they were keeping up. No matter how far I drove, I tried to shake them off, swerving the truck from side to side, but they didn't vanish. They were still there, moving in sync with me. I didn't know how, but it felt like they were guiding me, herding me into some unknown destination. Then, the radio flickered to life. A low, distorted voice crackled through the static. "You can't outrun us, Mason." I froze. My name. It wasn't a coincidence. There was no way someone could have known my name. My blood ran cold as I realized that these figures, these people, were somehow connected to me. The truck's headlights flickered and dimmed, and the road ahead grew darker, the trees closing in. I couldn't see where I was going anymore, just a wall of blackness closing in on me, and the sound of footsteps, countless footsteps, growing louder and louder. I was trapped. The last thing I remember, before I lost consciousness, was the figures surrounding the truck, their faces pale and expressionless, their eyes wide, staring at me. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. When I woke up, I was still on the road, the truck idling, the engine humming quietly. The figures were gone. The air had returned to normal, the night calm again. I checked my watch. Nothing was out of place, except that I had no memory of what had happened during those hours. I drove on, but I'll never forget that road, the figures, and the voice calling my name. And sometimes, when I pass through certain stretches of highway, I still hear the echo of those footsteps. My name is Chris, and I've been a truck driver for nearly a decade now. Some nights the job feels like nothing more than a blur of road and headlights, a repetitive cycle of endless stretches of highway. But that night was different. It started like any other night, driving through the heart of the Midwest, heading south toward a small town I didn't know well. The night was cold, a biting chill creeping into the cab of my truck. The roads were quiet, almost too quiet. No other vehicles in sight, just me, the hum of the engine, and the occasional flicker of my headlights illuminating the long stretches of empty road ahead. Around 3 a.m., I passed a truck stop. The lights were flickering, and a few trucks were parked under the awning, their drivers no doubt asleep. I didn't need to stop, but I did glance over to see if anyone was awake. That's when I saw her standing just outside the lot, by the side of the road. A woman, dressed in all black. Her hair was long and unkempt, blowing wildly in the wind. Her face was pale, her eyes wide and unblinking. She wasn't holding a sign, and there were no bags with her. Nothing that suggested she was even trying to hitch a ride. I didn't think twice. I just kept driving, the headlights flashing past her, barely giving her a second glance. But as I drove farther down the road, something felt wrong. The quiet road started to feel suffocating, like there was something waiting. I glanced at the rearview mirror, just to check if I was being followed by another truck, but the road was empty behind me. Still, the sense of unease clung to me like a fog. Minutes later, a sudden jolt from the back of my truck nearly sent me off the road. My hands shot to the wheel, trying to regain control. The rig swerved slightly, but I managed to steady it. I looked over my shoulder, but there was nothing there. The highway was as empty as it had been before. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I checked my mirrors again, nothing. But then, as if from nowhere, I saw her, the woman, standing in the middle of the road, blocking my path. Her figure was more defined now, her face twisted in an expression of pure despair. I slammed on the brakes, the truck skidding to a halt just inches from her. My heart was racing, and for a split second, I thought I had hit her. But when I looked, she wasn't there. The road was empty, as if she had never been standing there at all. I was breathing heavily now, sweat beading on my forehead. This wasn't right. I started to drive again, slowly this time, my eyes darting from mirror to mirror. I was trying to make sense of what had just happened when I heard a voice, "Help me." I froze, my hands gripping the wheel so tightly. My knuckles turned white. The voice had come from the passenger seat. I hadn't seen anyone in the seat, but the words were clear, as if someone was sitting right next to me. "Help me." I didn't dare turn to look. The voice wasn't human, it was cold, almost hollow. My foot pressed harder on the gas, my truck picking up speed. The voice continued, growing more urgent, more desperate. I could feel her presence now. It was like she was sitting right there beside me, her cold breath on my neck. I had to get her out of the truck. I had to get away from whatever this was. I reached for the door handle, ready to pull over and jump out, but before I could, the voice stopped. The truck's interior went silent, the air still. That's when I noticed something. In my side mirror, there she was again, standing on the shoulder of the road, her face staring back at me with those same empty eyes. I didn't stop this time. I couldn't. My heart pounded as I pushed the truck harder, the road stretching ahead like an endless void. I kept my eyes straight ahead, my hands shaking, and for what felt like hours, I didn't dare look back. Eventually, I made it into town, but I couldn't shake the feeling that she was still there, still following me. Even now, every time I drive through that stretch of highway, I can't help but glance nervously at the side of the road, wondering if she's still waiting, just out of sight, for the next driver to pass by. My name's Alex, and I've been trucking for over 5 years. There's something about long drives through empty highways that calms me, or at least it used to. But that was before I met the hitchhiker. It was another late night shift, and I was driving down an old stretch of highway in the middle of nowhere. The weather was unpredictable, thick clouds hanging low, threatening rain, but no drops had fallen yet. I had about another hour until I reached the next town, and the road was quiet, too quiet for my liking. I've seen my fair share of weird things on the road, drunk drivers, strange road signs that appear and disappear, and the occasional abandoned car. But what I saw that night, it still haunts me. As I rounded a bend in the road, I saw a figure standing at the edge, barely visible in the faint glow of my headlights. At first, I thought it was a mirage or maybe just a trick of the fog, but as I got closer, I could see the figure more clearly. A man, dressed in a heavy jacket and jeans, thumb out, trying to hitch a ride. It wasn't the first hitchhiker I'd seen, but something about him felt off. His posture was stiff, like he was standing too still, and there was no movement. No sign of life, except for the occasional sway of his jacket in the wind. My gut twisted as I slowed down, wondering if I should stop or just keep driving. I never stop for hitchhikers. It's a rule I've always followed, but something compelled me to pull over, just a little further down the road. My truck creaked as I parked, and I killed the engine. He didn't move. He just stood there, facing me, silent. My heart raced as I rolled down the window. "You need a ride," I called out, but his eyes never shifted. He didn't speak either. After a long, uncomfortable pause, I repeated myself, "You want a ride, or not?" That's when he slowly tilted his head toward me. His face was pale, almost sickly, and his eyes were unnervingly wide, locked onto mine with a vacant expression. There was something wrong with him. I could feel it. But still, the silence hung in the air, heavy and tense. I sighed, ready to pull away, when the man suddenly spoke, his voice low and cold. "I'm trying to get to the next town, but I can't get there alone." A shiver ran down my spine. I didn't know why, but something in his voice sent a chill through me. I was about to drive off when I noticed something even stranger. His hand was gripping the door handle. His fingers too long, too thin, and for a split second, I thought I saw something wrong with his skin, like it was decaying. "Get in," I heard myself say, and immediately regretted it. But it was too late. He was already moving toward me, his feet dragging, his body swaying unnaturally, like he was being pulled rather than walking. I slammed the door shut just as he reached the truck, but my instincts were screaming at me to leave. The air felt thick, like the world was holding its breath. The figure stood there for what felt like an eternity, before he finally turned away, walking off into the darkness, his footsteps echoing through the still night. Relieved, I started the engine and quickly drove off, trying to shake the feeling of unease that had settled over me. But as I looked in my side mirror, I saw him again. He was standing there in the distance, still watching me, his eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. I couldn't explain it, but I knew then that I hadn't seen a hitchhiker. I had seen something else, something dead. The rain started to fall, the sound of the droplets hitting my windshield, drowning out the silence of the road. I didn't know if I'd make it to the next town, or if the road itself was playing tricks on me. But one thing was clear. There was something on that highway that shouldn't be there, and it was waiting for its next victim. My name is Tyler, and I've been on the road for almost 10 years now. I've driven through just about every stretch of highway this country has to offer, but there are certain routes I avoid if I can help it, routes that leave me with a feeling I can't quite shake. One of those was Route 65, a stretch of road that cuts through desolate countryside, with barely a town in sight for miles. I didn't have much choice this time. The load needed to be delivered, and the deadline was tight. So, with the hum of my truck's engine and the rhythmic bump of the tires against the asphalt, I set off into the night. The sky was overcast, and the wind felt heavier than usual, pressing against the sides of the rig. Around 2 a.m., the roads were completely empty. I hadn't seen another vehicle in over an hour, which made the night feel even more eerie. I had the radio on low, the sound of an old blues track barely reaching my ears, when something caught my eye in the rearview mirror. A truck. It was a few miles behind me, but the headlights were shining brighter than they should have been, almost as if it was right on my tail. I tried to shake off the uneasy feeling creeping up my spine. Maybe I was just tired. But the more I watched, the more it seemed like this truck was getting closer at a pace that didn't make sense. The road was straight, and I wasn't speeding. It was impossible for it to close the distance this quickly. I gripped the wheel tighter, my gaze flicking between the road ahead and the mirror. I could see the truck now, clear as day, tailgating me, the high beams blinding me in the rear view. And yet, the headlights never seemed to move. They stayed locked in place, as if the other driver was deliberately staying just behind me. I sped up. The truck behind me did the same. I slowed down, hoping it would pass. But no, it stayed glued to my rear view. The sound of my engine roared as I pushed the accelerator harder, but it felt like I was being drawn into something. My heart began to race, and panic started to set in. With a deep breath, I picked up the radio, hoping to hear a voice from another driver, maybe someone on a CB channel who could offer some relief. Breaker. This is Tyler, on Route 65. Anyone out there? Static. Nothing. Just the crackle of dead air. I checked the rear view again. The truck was still there. My mind spun, and I wondered if maybe I was hallucinating. Exhaustion had done that to me before, but this felt different. This felt real. Suddenly my truck jolted. The steering wheel yanked to the left, forcing me to fight for control. I swerved, nearly skidding off the road into the ditch. I slammed the brakes, heart pounding, and the truck behind me. It was gone, vanished. I didn't wait to figure out what had happened. I pulled over to the shoulder, parked, and just sat there, hands trembling on the wheel. The storm was still roaring, and the wind howled. But everything felt too still, like the air was holding its breath. I wanted to get out of the truck, stretch my legs, get some fresh air to clear my head. But as I opened the door, the radio crackled to life again, the voice distorted, whispering something I couldn't quite make out. Then it hit me. The truck was gone, but there was no sound of the engine starting. No other vehicles had passed me, and yet the static on the radio sounded ... too close, too familiar. I glanced around. The wind was picking up, shaking the truck, and I could feel a presence. Something was out there. I could feel it. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up as I scanned the road, the darkness seeming to stretch infinitely. I had no choice but to drive on. I started the engine, the sound of the truck roaring back to life. But as I looked back through the rearview mirror, I saw something that stopped my heart. There, in the reflection, a figure stood in the headlights. Not the driver of the truck, but a shadow. Standing still in the middle of the road, staring directly at me. I slammed the truck into gear, speeding away, not daring to look back. I didn't care if I ran out of gas, or if I drove the rest of the way blind. But I knew one thing for sure, wasn't alone on that road anymore. My name is Ethan, and I've been driving long haul for over 7 years now. It's a life I never thought I'd choose, but once you get behind the wheel, the road becomes your second home. The constant hum of the engine, the endless stretches of asphalt, there's a strange comfort in it, or at least, that's what I thought until that night. It was late, well past midnight, and I was rolling down a stretch of highway so remote, I hadn't seen another truck or car for miles. The only thing lighting up the road was the faint glow from my headlights, and the occasional flicker of lightning in the distance. The storm had been brewing for hours, but it wasn't the rain that made me uneasy, it was the feeling that something wasn't right. I glanced at the GPS. There was a small town coming up, but I wasn't sure if I'd make it there before the storm hit. I pressed my foot harder on the accelerator, the truck rumbling beneath me, and the wind outside howling as it picked up speed. Then, I saw it. A pair of headlights in the distance, way too close for comfort. My gut twisted as I realized it was another truck, traveling at the same speed, but in the opposite direction. I had barely enough time to react as the other truck seemed to swerve toward me, almost on a collision course. I swerved to the right, my tires skidding on the wet road, and narrowly avoided a crash. I blinked, my heart racing, but the truck was gone. Just ... gone. I looked in my rearview mirror, expecting to see the truck behind me, but there was nothing, just empty road and darkness. I slowed down, trying to shake off the feeling of dread creeping up my spine. My hands were still gripping the wheel tightly, knuckles white, my mind racing with questions. Was I seeing things? Or was something out there, ... following me? I tried to brush it off, telling myself it was just the isolation playing tricks on my mind. The storm was making everything feel off, and I hadn't had a good night's sleep in days. Still, I couldn't shake the thought that something was wrong. Another hour passed, the storm growing fiercer. Suddenly, the radio crackled, breaking the silence with a burst of static. I flicked the dial, trying to find a station, but all I could hear was a low, guttural growl. My fingers froze on the dial. The sound was coming from the other truck, the one that had nearly collided with me. I leaned forward, staring out into the darkness, trying to see if I could catch any sign of movement. That's when I noticed something strange. There was no other truck, no headlights, no sign of life on the road. Then, the growling came again, louder this time. It was almost like a voice, but distorted, coming from all directions. My chest tightened, and I could feel a cold sweat dripping down my back. My foot slammed on the brakes as I tried to make sense of what was happening. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Ita's shadow moving fast along the side of the road. Too large to be a person, too fast to be anything normal. I couldn't turn my head fast enough to get a good look, but whatever it was gaining on me. The growl became more frantic, almost desperate, and my truck began to slow down, as if something was pulling it back. My heart pounded in my ears as I fought to keep control of the wheel. I slammed the accelerator, but it felt like the truck was being dragged backward, inch by inch. In a panic, I spun the wheel to the right, heading off the road and into the dark woods that lined the highway. The truck skidded across the gravel, and I heard a loud thud as something collided with the rear of my rig. I stopped the truck, my breath ragged, my hands shaking. The growling stopped, replaced by an eerie silence. I waited, frozen in place, but nothing came. No footsteps, no signs of anything unusual. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I stepped out of the truck, my legs weak beneath me. I glanced around expecting to see something. Anything but the only thing I could hear was the rain pouring down, washing away any trace of the strange event. As I made my way back to the cabin of my rig, a shadow passed over me again. This time, I didn't need to see it to know it was there. The air grew colder, and I could feel its presence lingering, just beyond my reach. I didn't know what had happened that night, or what I had seen, but one thing was clear: I wasn't alone on that highway anymore. My name is Cale Riven. I never believed a house could hate you until mine did. I moved in last fall. The house was a steal, and that should have been the first red flag. But it looked perfect. Modern layout, clean finishes, floor-to-ceiling, windows, and a strange, windowless room at the end of the hall. The realtor called it the reflection room. Inside, every wall was covered in mirrors. From floor to ceiling, corner to corner, all seamless. No doors, no outlets, just your image, multiplied 100 times over. I asked what the room was used for. She smiled. It's decorative. I should have run. At first I avoided the room, but it had a pull, like a dare. I'd catch myself walking toward it, staring at my reflection, as if expecting it to blink first. The first sign that something was off. My reflection started moving out of sync, not by much, just a fraction of a second, like lag. Then came the smiles, slow, wide, and not mine. One night I tested it. I raised my hand. My reflection followed, but its smile remained. When I dropped my arm, it kept waving. The lights in the room began flickering whenever I entered, but never anywhere else in the house. Then came the tapping dot from inside the mirror. Soft at first, fingernails, then fists. I set up a camera, aimed it straight at the main mirror, and left it recording overnight. When I watched the footage the next morning, my blood turned to ice. At 3:03 a.m., I entered the room, except I hadn't. It was my reflection, identical in every way, walking freely inside the mirror world. It stopped, turned to the camera, and whispered something. I turned up the volume. I'm almost through. I smashed the mirrors. They didn't. Break. I called contractors. Every one of them refused the job. Said there were no mirrors, only glass walls behind the drywall. Some kind of reflective paneling built into the frame of the house itself. One even muttered, "This isn't a renovation. It's a cage." That night, the door slammed behind me as I passed the hallway, locked from the inside, and the reflection wasn't there anymore. I stood in the room, alone, surrounded by blank mirrors. Then she stepped out. She had my face but hollow, as if stretched over something else, taller, smiling with glee and hunger. "I told you," she whispered. "You looked too long." The lights went out. When they came back on, I was standing inside the mirror, and she was outside, living my life. I screamed. Every night, unheard. You might think you're safe behind your own reflection. You're not. My name is Calder Knox, and I don't believe in ghosts. I moved into my new place in the suburbs a month ago. A fresh start. Quiet neighborhood. Clean walls. No skeletons in the closet or so I thought. The house was built in the 70s but looked modern after renovations. Still, there was one thing that bugged me. A sealed hatch in the hallway ceiling. Painted over. No handle. No explanation. I only noticed it because I kept hearing noises above me at night, like footsteps, but slower, dragging. I told myself it was old pipes, raccoons, wind, the usual excuses skeptics like me recite like prayers. Then came the THUDS, not every night, just some, always at 3:33 a.m., like something heavy dropped and rolled, always followed by silence. Too complete to be natural, curiosity finally got the best of me. I grabbed a ladder and a crowbar and pried the hatch open. Dust rained down. The air that hit my face was dry and ancient, like opening a tomb. I aimed my flashlight upward. There was a narrow crawl space, wooden beams, insulation, nothing unusual, except a single rocking horse sitting in the center. Not a box, not old furniture. A wooden horse, pale, cracked eyes painted too wide. It rocked once, just once. I climbed up. It was ice cold. My breath fogged. I stepped onto the beam and moved toward the horse. That's when I noticed something else. Deep scratch marks on the inside of the ceiling panels. Long, frenzied, as if something had tried to claw its way down. I heard a whisper, right beside my ear. Called her. I fell. Crashed through the hatch. Snapped my wrist. Spent the night in the ER. I came back, angry, ready to prove it was all stress, imagination. I filmed the crawl space. Left a camera running all night. What it captured made my blood freeze. At exactly 3:33, the horse rocked. A hand gray skeletal reached into frame. Then a face pressed against the hatch opening. No eyes. Just a gaping, toothless maw. It whispered, "You looked up. Now I'll come down." I sealed the hatch, nailed it shut, painted over it like before. Pretended nothing happened, but the noises returned. Louder now, heavier. And last night, I found footprints in the hallway, dust bare, wet, leading away from the hatch, and stopping right at the foot of my bed. My name is Alara Bexley, and I inherited a house I didn't know existed. It came in the mail, a lawyer's letter, informing me of a distant relative's passing. Great Aunt Marnie. Never met her, never even heard of her. But she left me her home in Vermont. Isolated, tucked between dense pines, and old as hell. I figured, why not? Free house, possible resale. So I drove up, unlocked the heavy oak door, and stepped into dust and silence. The house smelled like mothballs and earth. Most of it was still. Furnished faded photos, grandfather clocks, porcelain dolls that watched every step I took. Then I found the letter, written in quivering cursive. Left on the dining table. Alara, do not open the basement. Ever. You carry the blood, but you must resist the pull. The thing below wears many faces. None of them are ours. Creepy. Yes, I laughed it off. Old people get weird near the end. Still, I checked the basement door. Rusted shut, padlocked. I let it be. But that night, I heard her voice, soft, familiar, though I'd never heard it before. Alara, dear, I'm so cold down here. It came from the floor. The second night, the dolls had moved. Slightly, a few inches closer, all facing the basement door, and the whispering got louder. My name repeated in a voice that almost sounded like my mother's. She's been gone for years. Alara, honey, why won't you let me out? I smashed the padlock. The steps creaked downward into pitch black. I didn't want to go, but something, curiosity, bloodline, madness, dragged me down. At the bottom, the air was wet and foul. My flashlight barely pierced the gloom, but I saw it's a rocking chair in the center, facing the wall, and someone in it. She looked like my mother, but taller, thinner, limbs too long, skin too pale. She rocked slowly, humming a lullaby I remembered from childhood. "Ilara," she said, "don't you recognize your family?" She turned her face. It was my face, but twisted, grinning with too many teeth, eyes hollow, black. I screamed and ran. She didn't follow. Not yet. But since that night, the house has changed. The basement door won't close. Shadows stretch where they shouldn't. The mirrors don't show my reflection anymore, they show hers. And every night, the voice returns. "Ilara, you set me free. Now I'll show you who we really are." My name is Rowan Mirth, and I bought this house to rebuild myself after a brutal breakup and a dead-end job. I wanted solitude, a place to start over. The fixer-upper in rural Pennsylvania was perfect, cheap, spacious, and beautifully derelict. I planned to document the renovation on my channel, Rowan Rebuilds. Day 1, I noticed something odd. The living room walls had large uneven patches under the peeling wallpaper. I assumed it was bad plasterwork, maybe old water damage. I made a note to scrape it off and start fresh. The second night, I heard a knocked out from inside the wall, soft, rhythmic, like someone trying to get my attention, but careful not to wake the whole house. I froze. Then I laughed it off. Told my viewers it was probably an animal trapped behind the drywall. I set up my camera overnight, facing the largest bulge in the living room wall. When I reviewed the footage, the camera flickered at 2:17 a.m. Then I saw it. The bulge moved, not slightly, not subtly. It pulsed outward, stretched as if something behind. It was shifting, breathing, and just for a second, fingers pushed through. 5 long indentations, dragging downward. No sound, no explanation. I stopped filming. I decided to remove the plaster and see what was behind it. I chiseled into the wall, slowly. The dust had a strange smell like spoiled milk and iron. Under the first few layers, I found wooden slats. Nothing unusual, but then I saw it. A face, mummified, wide-eyed mouth open in a scream. Embedded in the plaster itself. I stumbled back. The air turned cold. My ears rang. I called the police. They arrived, investigated, and dismissed it as an old Halloween decoration sealed into the wall by a previous owner. They laughed. I didn't. I kept digging. I found more hands, bones, even a partial torso melded into the structure, like some grotesque art piece. That night, I dreamt of men in overalls, sealing a woman into the wall. She was alive, screaming. Her voice was muffled by layers of plaster and paint. When I awoke, my hands were raw, covered in dust, chisels still in my grip. I had been digging in my sleep. The next morning, every wall in the house had new bulges, some small, some shaped like limbs. They hadn't been there before, and the knocking returned, but now it came from all sides. Panic set in. I tried to leave, but my front door was bricked shut from the inside. I don't even own bricks. I smashed a window to escape. When I turned back, the house changed. It stood taller. Shadows flickered behind every pane. I've been staying in my car, parked across the street, watching it. The house is growing, swelling outward like it's digesting something or someone. Sometimes, I hear a woman scream from inside, and then knocking, coming from behind my back seat. My name is Miles Fenwick, and I made the worst decision of my life when I bought this house. It was a good deal to good, really. A 5-bedroom farmhouse on the edge of a sleepy Oregon town, priced like an apartment. I was told it had a history, but no one would tell me more. Honestly, I didn't care. I was tired of renting, tired of cities, tired of people. The first week was peaceful. Birds in the morning, rain at night. I set up my office in the east room upstairs. It had a large window that faced the trees. The silence was perfect for writing, but that silence started getting too perfect. On the 6th night, I noticed the east room had no sound at all. No creaking floors, no wind through the trees, not even the buzz of electronics. My computer fan stopped spinning when I entered. My phone screen dimmed. No signal. I tested it, played music in the hallway, then stepped inside. Silence total. Oppressive silence. I thought maybe the insulation was just thick. I moved my desk back into the hallway, but then I began hearing thuds coming from inside. That room. Slow, deliberate. Always at 3:12 a.m., not before, not after. One night, I placed my phone on the floor just outside the doorway, recording. The next morning, there was no audio, just 43 minutes of complete silence, except for the last 3 seconds. A voice, low, strained, whispered, "Don't let it hear you." I stopped sleeping, kept the door closed. But sometimes I'd wake to find it open, despite triple checking the lock. The silence started spreading. The bathroom, the stairs, the whole upstairs floor began to lose sound. Footsteps vanished. Faucets turned on with no splash. I couldn't hear my own breathing, but in that quiet, I started sensing something else, a presence, not watching, listening. I tried playing loud music through the house. It helped for a while. The silence receded. But the moment the track ended, the quiet surged in like a wave, stronger than before. And that night, I saw it, standing in the east room, just beyond the doorway, a tall, thin figure, gray and still, with no mouth, just a smooth face where sound should be. It turned to look at me and tilted its head. I couldn't scream. There was no sound in me. I ran. I stayed at a motel for a week. The moment I stepped back into the house, my ears popped like stepping into a vacuum. The east room door was open again. There was something scratched into the floor. It listens, it learns, it wants more. I tried to sell. No takers. I offered to burn it down. The fire department laughed. But when I lit the match in the east room, it extinguished instantly. No flame survives there now. The silence follows me, to the grocery store, to the gas station. I'll be talking to someone, and suddenly nothing. No voice, no music, just that vacuum pulling in around me. And sometimes, when the quiet is deep enough, I see it behind them, watching, waiting for their voices to vanish too. My name is Caden Vale, and I didn't choose this house. It chose me. I inherited it from an uncle I'd never met. Sabashanvali, the letter said. Deceased without heirs. The house was tucked in the woods of Vermont. Victorian style. Wallpapered from floor to ceiling in faded rose patterns. It smelled like cinnamon and dust. I moved in the day after the funeral, grateful to finally own something in this world. The first night, I found a note under my pillow. Do not peel the wallpaper. Let it sleep. At first, I laughed. Some forgotten family prank, maybe. But as I explored the house, I noticed every room was sealed in the same brittle wallpaper. No nails, no seams. Like skin stretched over a wound. The kitchen wall had a small tear in it, hidden behind the stove. I didn't touch it. Not yet. Strange things started small. Whispers when the wind died. The feeling of being watched, even when all windows were covered. And that smell cinnamon growing stronger at night, cloying, rotting at the edges. One morning, I found long scratches on the hallway walls. 5 thin lines, like claw marks. I lived alone. There were no animals. Then came the dreams. I was standing in a dim room, wallpaper twitching like muscle. Voices behind it begged, sobbed, screamed my name. The pattern would shift and swirl into eyes, hundreds of them watching me. I'd wake drenched in sweat, fingers bleeding. Always the same whisper in my ear. Let it sleep. I finally gave in. I peeled back a single strip of wallpaper in the attic. Underneath was not drywall, not wood. It was skin, pale, veined, warm to the touch. IVOMITE. The next night, the house changed. The walls pulsed, slow and steady. like a heartbeat. Footsteps echoed where there were no floors. Laughter spilled from closets. The air thinned, choking with that spiced, rotting scent. I tried to leave, but the front door had vanished. In its place stood more wallpaper. It was then I noticed something. Wherever I had peeled, the voices grew louder, clearer, angry. I tore open the kitchen wall in desperation. Behind it, mouths. Real mouths, sewn shut, gaping, and eyes, human eyes, blinking rapidly, weeping. I screamed. The wallpaper resealed itself as I watched, flesh knitting back together. It didn't want me to see. It was protecting itself, or hiding them. I ran to the attic to burn the house down, but the match wouldn't light. The room laughed, and the wallpaper whispered, "You woke it." That night, I woke up in the walls, not in a room, in the walls. Cramped, dark, pressed between layers of muscle and paper. I screamed, but no sound escaped. I pounded, but my fists met only softness. I think I've been in here for days, maybe weeks. The house still stands. People walk by, sometimes they come in. I try to warn them. I scream until my throat bleeds, but the wallpaper muffles me. Always has, and soon, it'll cover them too. My name is Elric Danner, and the house I bought is alive. It wasn't supposed to be. I'm a contractor. I've gutted enough places to know wood, concrete, and insulation don't breathe. But this one does. I noticed it the first night I slept there. At exactly 3:33 a.m., I woke up to the sound of inhaling. Long, deep, through the walls kind of breathing. It wasn't wind, it had rhythm, lungs. The air in my bedroom moved with it, like the house. Exhaled gently across my face. I searched the vents, the attic, even ripped open drywall. Nothing. The sound stopped at dawn. I tried to ignore it. Told myself it was just the acoustics. Old pipes, faulty memory. Then the walls started pulsing. Not visibly, no, bulging or cracking. But when I placed my hand on the hallway paneling, I could feel something shift behind it. Like a heartbeat. A slow, sick thump-thump. As if the house was checking if I was still there. And worse, the layout began to shift. One day I'd walk into the kitchen and there'd be 2 windows. The next day, 1. Sometimes the pantry would be on the left, sometimes the right. Rooms felt longer or shorter, depending on where I stood. I set up string lines and laser levels to prove I wasn't crazy. They moved. The blueprints didn't match anymore. The house was rearranging itself. I started marking walls with chalk, X's, arrows, door counts. Each morning, they'd be gone, not erased gone. The drywall looked untouched, and sometimes, in the quiet, I'd hear the creak of footsteps, pacing inside the walls. One night, I awoke to find myself in a room I didn't recognize. No doors, no windows, just for smooth walls and a soft red glow coming from nowhere. The breathing was louder here, wet, hungrier. The floor pulsed beneath my feet like muscle tissue. I screamed. When I blinked, I was back in my bed. I should have left. I tried, but the front door led to the basement. The basement stairs led to the attic, and the attic just circled back into the master bedroom. I was stuck in a Mobius loop of wood and horror. I stopped eating. The house fed me anyway, every night. A warm plate of food appeared on the dining table, fresh. My favorite dishes, some I hadn't had since childhood. I'd find water drawn in the tub, steaming. Clothes folded I never owned. The house wasn't just alive, it was aware. It wanted me. The final straw came when I smashed open the floor beneath the foyer. Beneath the wood was no foundation. A pulsing red membrane stretched taut across the earth. It quivered when I touched it. Then it opened, revealing rows of teeth. I ran. I don't know how I escaped. I woke up in a field a mile away, barefoot, covered in dust. The house was gone, literally. There's no listing, no street records, no foundation left behind, like it never existed. but I still hear it sometimes, in my dreams, breathing, waiting, I think. It wants me back. My name is Bryn Halley, and last month, I bought a home that shouldn't exist. It wasn't listed online. I found it by accident while driving through an unfamiliar neighborhood. A narrow cul-de-sac ended in a brick house shaded by dying trees. There was a sign in the yard, "For sale, cheap." I was curious. Inside, the place was immaculate, dustless, fully furnished, but strangely cold. The realtor never showed up. The front door had been unlocked. It felt like the house was waiting. I moved in the next day. At first, everything seemed fine. It was quiet, too quiet, like the air was holding its breath. I noticed strange things, mirrors that didn't reflect me properly, lights flickering only in one room upstairs, and a locked door at the end of the hall with no keyhole. It was the only room I couldn't enter. One night, I heard movement inside it, a dragging sound, then soft, rhythmic knocking. I pressed my ear to the wood. Knock, 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 knock. Pause. Then a whisper. "I'm still here." I stumbled back, heart pounding. I didn't sleep that night. Over the next few days, the house started to change. Furniture shifted slightly when I left and returned. A second toothbrush appeared next to mine. 2 bowls sat in the sink when I had only used one, and the voices grew bolder. "You forgot to say goodnight. I liked the red shirt. Wear it again. Room for one more." The locked door remained shut, but the knocking became constant. I tried to leave. I packed my car and bolted. But after 5 minutes of driving, I found myself right back in the cul-de-sac, parked in front of the same house. No matter how far I drove, I always returned to that same damned street. I smashed the mirrors, burned the furniture, tried to destroy the door, but every morning, everything was back in place. Perfect, untouched, as if I'd never tried. Then came the night. I woke to find the door open, just a crack, just enough to see the edge of a bed inside, and someone lying on it. I couldn't see their face, only their pale feet. The rest was hidden in shadow. I called out, "Who's in there?" No answer. I stepped closer. The door creaked wider, and the figure sat up. It was me, exactly me. Same face, same clothes, same terrified eyes. But her smile was wrong, too wide, too still. She spoke in my voice. "You took my place, now I'll take yours." She lunged. I slammed the door. Now it's locked again, but from the inside. Because I'm in there now. She walks around in my skin, wears my clothes, lives my life. I watch from the dark, trapped in the room that shouldn't exist. She waves at the mirror. Sometimes I scream, but no one hears me. She hums lullabies I don't remember learning, and every time someone visits, she shows them the house, smiling, inviting. There's always room for one more. My name is Calder Venn, and I made the worst decision of my life 3 weeks ago. I bought a Victorian fixer-upper just outside of Darsley. The price was suspiciously low, but I chalked it up to the outdated structure and peeling wallpaper. In every room, I was excited. I wanted a project, something I could call my own. I didn't know the house already had an occupant. It began with the wallpaper in the master bedroom, a faded floral pattern, yellowing at the edges, curling like dead skin. As I began stripping it away, I noticed something strange beneath a figure, a rough charcoal drawing of a man. He was tall, slouched, with limbs too long and fingers like tangled wires. His eyes were hollow ovals, his grin crude and stretched. It wasn't some child's scribble. It felt ... alive, watching. I peeled more, and there he was again, and again, and again. Dozens of versions of him, hidden under layers of wallpaper in every room. Sometimes full body sketches, sometimes just a face peering from the corner, always staring, always grinning. My friend said, It was probably just some disturbed artist who used to live here. I tried to believe them, but then the drawings started changing. One night, I passed by the guest bathroom and caught something from the corner of my eye. I turned back. The wallpaper had a fresh tear. The man's head was tilted now, and his hand had moved closer to the edge. By the next day, every depiction of him was subtly different. One had turned to face the window. Another had a hand pressed flat against the wall, fingers spread wide like he was trying to push through. I stopped peeling. I sealed every room and tried to ignore them, but they didn't stop. I started hearing the sound of scratching at night long, deliberate strokes like fingernails dragging across wallpaper. I'd wake up with strips of paper torn and curled onto the floor, revealing him a little more. One night, I dreamt I was inside the walls, cold, pressed between wooden beams, wrapped in dry paper. The wallpaper man was with me, breathing slow, speaking in rustling sounds like sheets crumpling. He said, "You peeled me out. Now you let me in." I woke up with wallpaper clinging to my arms like it had grown there. The next day, I painted over everything, sealed every wall. But that night, the paint peeled away in curled ribbons. He was closer, smiling wider. On the 7th night, I woke up to find him at the foot of my bed. Not a drawing, not a dream. Him. He stepped forward with stiff, cracking movements like paper folding. His body wasn't made of flesh. It was wallpaper, yellowed, patterned skin twisting around a man-shaped void. His eyes were holes. He leaned down and whispered, "One more room left." Then he vanished. I ran. I never went back. But every night since, wherever I stay, I find a single strip of faded wallpaper on the wall near my bed. Just one strip, with a shape behind it, just beginning to show. I think he's still peeling through. And I think the last room left is me. My name is Ellery Rowe, and I moved into my new home a week ago. A modest 2-story nestled in the sleepy edges of Crest Hill. The house had charm, quirks, and a silence that felt almost too perfect. I moved alone, fresh out of a breakup, looking for peace. What I found instead was a sound. It began on the 3rd night. At exactly 3:17 a.m., I was yanked out of sleep by a sharp creak beneath my bed. It wasn't the settling of old floorboards. It was rhythmic, deliberate, like someone crawling on wood with their nails. The first few nights, I told myself it was nothing. Maybe a squirrel under the floor, or pipes expanding. But every night, the noise returned closer, slower, and somehow heavier. I avoided the basement entirely. The stairs were steep and narrow, and the door would stick, as if the wood resisted being opened. On the 4th night, I left my phone recording overnight. The next morning, I found a 30-minute audio clip beginning with silence and ending with whispers. The voice was hoarse, guttural. It repeated a phrase I couldn't understand. Something like, "Elra, come Bilu." I laughed it off, nervously. Maybe a prank. Maybe interference. Still, I couldn't shake the pressure in my chest whenever I stepped on the floorboards above the basement. Something was down there, watching, waiting. That night, I forced the basement door open with a crowbar. The air inside was colder than outside. Dust clung to the air like fog, and the single bulb flickered. When I pulled the chain, there was nothing, no rodents, no pipes, banging, just a stone floor, a few shelves, and a cracked mirror leaning against the far wall. I turned to leave, but the bulb burst above me. Darkness swallowed everything. Then I heard it, not from beneath me, behind me, breathing, shallow, fast, right against my neck. I turned and saw it in the mirror, a pale figure crouched upside down on the ceiling, eyes pitch black, mouth stretched far too wide, whispering my name backward. "Euro, Euro." I screamed and scrambled up the stairs, slamming the door shut behind me. I moved a dresser in front of it and didn't sleep for the rest of the night. The next morning, I put the house up for sale. But every night, I remain here. The whispers grow louder, the footsteps echo under the bed again, and every morning, I find the basement door wide open. I tried staying elsewhere, hotels, friends, couches, but the whisper follows me. Every night at 3:17 a.m., they say a new home is a fresh start. I believed that too, but no one told me some homes choose you, and once they do, they never let you go.